This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. With your host, Tyson Gifford and William Rower. Episode 136, recorded November 30th, 2017. Hello, everybody. This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I'm your host and the editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson. And joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at TVE, William Roerick.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about the end of Stranger Things 2, so the last two episodes, as well as this week's episode of Mr. Robot titled Don't Delete Me. So we're going to be talking about those two first, but we're going to kick things off with a little bit of news. So this week, one big piece of news hit actually just today, or last night, I believe. And that is that Bryan Fuller and Micheal Green have departed American Gods at Starz. They're no longer going to be serving as showrunners for the show.
This is pretty surprising. It's pretty out left field. I don't know what happened. I don't think there's been a statement by either party about what happened yet, has there?
From what I've read, I don't think there's been an official statement, but from what I've read from sources inside have said that it's because of it's just a typical creative conflict type thing. It's creative and money. They wanted a larger budget on the series.
Right.
They weren't getting it.
I don't know why. I thought this was like a big hit for Starz. It
could be the amount. Like, I've seen some people scoffing at it because it was already going to be floating at around 10 million an episode, apparently.
Right.
And they wanted to go a little bit higher than that, which sounds like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. But like, in the current era of TV, that's not that big of a deal anymore.
I think in the current era of TV, if you want to be competitive, at least with scripted if you want to be competitive with scripted television, I think you have to pay. You have to put the money in now. HBO especially has set the bar.
Yeah. Game of Thrones cost way more than 10 million an episode now.
Yes. And HBO is happy to pay it.
Yeah. And then you look at what Amazon has done with Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
And we don't have a per episode on that, but already 250 million just for the rights.
Yeah, already.
They're going to have to spend a lot too on that show.
We were just arguing that Amazon might have overpaid for that, and regardless of if they overpaid or not, it just shows that they're willing to spend. They're serious. Mm-hmm. So if Starz wants to compete, we got HBO, we got Amazon, we even got Netflix willing to spend big money developing scripted television. I think Starz, channels like Starz, and they're gonna find out real quick that they need to spend or get out of the gate. They're gonna be priced out of the
put up or shut up.
Exactly. So I think
it's gonna be, because when you get like Amazon, Netflix, now Apple entering the game, that's what Bryan Fuller's other project is gonna be at Apple. They're dealing with Silicon Valley money.
Right.
That's like much more. I mean, that's, they fart out $10 million.
Yeah, they fart. Yeah, exactly. Apple, $10 million would be nothing to Apple.
Yeah.
Literally.
$10 million is like, does that buy a lollipop for Apple? It's like, they're so out of touch with like our kind of reality of how much things cost that it just doesn't even like cause them any discomfort to spend that much. So you're getting into that state, and you're going to need to, everyone's going to need to jump up to compete or to find other ways to compete outside of budget. But when you're in a show like American Gods that needs a production budget, it's got a big cast. It's got like, this large premise. It's going to need like digital effects. It's going to need like, these sets and
especially since, again, this is a hit driven industry. It's rare to have a hit. you can count the number of major hits that these on practically one hand. Netflix has been really lucky in which they've managed to have several big hits. Stranger Things being one, but it's not easy to do. And when you get one of those, I would think you would want to do whatever you can to preserve it and also to grow it, to make it an even bigger hit.
Mm-hmm. American Gods is still apparently scheduled to go on, at least at this point.
Well, the good news is Bryan Fuller and the other guy, the other showrunner, they've already written most of the scripts for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, as long as they keep the scripts and they follow the scripts, there shouldn't be any concerns story-wise, directing-wise. Maybe, directing-wise and, stylistically, we might see a change depending on who they bring in for the new showrunners and their vision.
Well, it's also a big part's going to be if David Slade's going to stick around as being creatively involved in the project.
Right.
He directed, several of the episodes. And the first season it was largely responsible alongside Fuller and Green for, kind of creating the visual tone for the show.
Right. This strikes me as being, I don't know, this worries me. I think this could very well be the last season of American Gods.
This could be its death knell.
Yeah, this could be its death knell. And it's a very silly thing in this to take something that's a success and sabotage it in such a way.
Yeah.
When Starz doesn't really have much in the way of major successes.
I mean, this is old television industry stuff. This is, that fiscally conservative nature of old TV, but this is in the current era of television. That's not gonna go, that's not gonna work.
That's not gonna go either. And you see HBO learned HBO is part of that era of old television, but they learned pretty quickly, or at least intuitively that they needed to spend money and that they're willing to spend money on bigger hits,
Yeah, I mean, that happened, I think, with Game of Thrones, where the first season of Game of Thrones was budget limited. Then there were some conflicts over the next couple seasons about how to kind of, how much money they were willing to spend. And then they hit a point, I think somewhere around season 4, season 5, where they're just well, you know what, forget it. We're just going to put in whatever we need into this. And then after that, you start getting things like Westworld, huge budget right up front. HBO's learned to kind of not be shy about that anymore.
Right. Yeah. They've learned not to be shy about that, which is great because, it means if Bryan Fuller wants to do a high budget show, he could possibly take that to HBO and do something there. Again, it's the companies that are willing to spend money now that are gonna win big, that are gonna find the bigger successes.
Yeah, because Starz doesn't really have a strong brand identity yet.
No.
And American Gods was probably their best chance at that.
And they haven't for since they started seriously getting into the scripted game. I can't name one big success from them.
Spartacus is probably the only one I could think of that was
Spartacus is the only one.
Even then, it's still
that wasn't a huge show. That was more for people who were in the know on the show,
Yeah, and then Outlander, I guess, is kind of
Outlander's probably
success too.
Yeah, that's Outlander. I would say was probably their biggest success so far.
Mm-hmm.
But American Gods, that broke out. That was set to be their first breakout hit.
So that's a bit disappointing.
Also,
don't worry about Fuller and Green. They both have multiple projects in the works.
Also, it was pretty amazing too because it was a Bryan Fuller show, and speaking of, he hasn't had much luck with a commercial success either. So not for lack of trying on his part.
Lots of luck with critical success.
Lots of luck with Kirk. He's very talented, but people, his work typically doesn't have mass appeal. So he's with American Gods, he's hit on something that resonated with people, and it's a shame that it's going to turn out like this. Like, I feel bad for Bryan Fuller. Poor guy can't catch a break no matter what. You know,
both Fuller and Green have a lot. It's Bryan Fuller and Micheal Green were the showrunners on American Gods. They both have a lot of projects in the work. I mean,
Right.
Fuller has, like, as we said, over at Apple, he's got the Amazing Stories series is being done.
I'm not sure how involved with Amazing Stories he was. Last I heard, it was like he was a producer on it.
He's listed as showrunner, but it's an anthology show. It's a week-to-week anthology show, so there isn't like a consistent tone. So it's a different showrunner on that is going to be a much different role than it would be on something like a serialized show. So it's not as big of a project for him in that regard. But apparently he's got a few other projects in development as well that just kind of haven't been announced yet. There's still been talk about Hannibal coming back in some way or another, maybe on like Amazon or maybe on some other service.
There's some talk about that. I don't know I don't think that's beyond this is something we would like to do phase. Whereas, it's an idea.
There's still talk, which means that there's actual, and the last thing I heard about it was that, De Laurentiis, the producer, or I think it's Gianna De Laurentiis, I'm not sure. She's been like actively like pursuing, a home to continue the series. So she's actually been having real meetings versus just, saying that they're up for it kind of thing. But we don't know anything about that, like how that's going or what's happening with that, or if it's still happening. We just heard about it when it was, that she was taking meetings. But, like I said, Bryan Fuller, he's supposedly got several other projects in development, and he has Amazing Stories. Micheal Green has had a great year. He's had two movies, this year that he's worked on with both, the new Blade Runner film and also, Murder on the Orient Express. And then he's got several TV projects in development as well. But they're not kind of like with the Bryan Fuller one, they're not like fully revealed or, they're just kind of in early stages. So they both kind of have work. One thing I thought was kind of interesting is that I was in a conversation about this and I had brought up the whole Lord of the Rings thing as a reason why the whole $10 million just doesn't seem like a big deal anymore for a budget. And then it suddenly hit me like Lord of the Rings still doesn't have a creative attached. I have no idea if Bryan Fuller would be interested at all, but like, man,
I've literally
do much better.
I've never seen Bryan Fuller mention Lord of the Rings at all, so.
Well, on Twitter, he mentioned Arabian Nights to me, and so that's kind of fantasy, so he likes that, so.
That's true.
So who knows, but, I was just thinking about the fact though that Amazon got this Lord of the Rings series doesn't have any creative attached at all, and how bad of a position that is. And I was thinking about how competitive the market is for like showrunners right now, because there aren't a lot of good showrunners that are free. A lot of showrunners are working on multiple projects right now. And then it popped in my head, oh shit, Bryan Fuller's schedule just opened up a bit.
That's true.
I wonder if Amazon, our companies, not just specifically for him, but if they're like paying very close attention to anybody leaving a showrunner on any project.
They could be. Although,
because they need a creative name to attach,
Although I didn't want to give off the impression that Amazon knew what they were doing by spending $2 million on Lord of the Rings. Just pointing out that they're willing to spend the money to be in the game, but Amazon has their own.
But they don't know what they're doing, yeah.
Yeah, they have their own issues.
But I mean, hey, if you were Amazon and you saw this kind of news, Bryan Fuller is that's the kind of name that you want to grab.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I was running Amazon,
you're in the market for a showrunner.
If I was running Amazon right now, it would already have been a press release. Bryan Fuller is going to be doing Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it's done.
Yeah, it's like the news comes out about the American Gods thing, and you just see 10 seconds later, you're calling him on the phone.
Yeah, like email
I have this little project. We desperately need a big showrunner. So yeah, so I mean, you might see him pop up in something like that. He hasn't found a lot of critical success, or a lot of not critical success. He has found a lot of that. He hasn't found a lot of like marketable success, but he is an in-demand showrunner.
To be fair, I think you could pair, as long as they're competent, you could pair pretty much anybody with Lord of the Rings, and its success is going to be determined more by the fact that it's Lord of the Rings than anything
Lord of the
else.
Rings, a new series by Scott Buck. Wait, you did say competent. Never mind.
I did. Yeah, I said competent. I mean, the IP can only take you so far. If you completely fuck it up, then you fuck it up. But like even somebody who does like a competent job, like say the Hobbit type job,
yeah,
can, it's gonna sell based on the brand. So like Amazon just has to find a director who won't completely fuck it up.
Yeah, they need creatives desperately though. They need to announce soon, because right now it's just it's just a financial deal, and that doesn't bode well.
Right, they just bought an IP and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So yeah, they need to get like the wheels moving on that. Like again, to me that is insane to spend $2 million on IP before you even know what you're doing with it.
I'm sure there's a lot happening behind the scenes we're just not privy to right now. I'm sure there's frantic meetings at speed to get this moving, It's just a matter of when we're going to hear anything about it. And based on the fact that they had no creative attached before, I have to imagine once they nail somebody down, they're not going to hold back on announcing it.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think so.
Because there's a lot of speculation about how they're going to do this, and that's going to be something that they need to address. But that's it for the news story, really, which was just, American Gods lost its showrunners. This kind of stuff happens. I mean, it could still be good without it. I heard Star Trek's been quite good without Bryan Fuller.
This came out of the blue.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it can be. I mean, I'm not going to suggest Bryan Fuller is like Jesus.
Although he is. Technically
speaking. I mean, I'm not saying like American Gods can still be great. They can still find somebody immensely talented to take over that show. Mm-hmm. But losing somebody as talented, it's not a good look right now.
It's a blow.
Yeah, it's a blow.
Let's move on though, and let's talk about Stranger Things. So we've been talking about season 2 of Stranger Things for the last couple of weeks, and now we're going to kind of conclude that. We're talking about the last 2 episodes, Chapter 8, The Mind Flayer, and Chapter 9, The Gate, in which kind of everything comes together and we get our conclusion for season 2. So before we even start, general impressions, how do you feel about Stranger Things season 2?
Good. Overall good. Let's see.
A little misstep with the last episode, but otherwise.
Well, otherwise fine. I mean, I thought everything came together pretty well. It did seem like a little rushed at the end. Like things start happening pretty damn fast.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than
I think part of that was also just that it came back from last week's episode.
Right, exactly.
It kind of interrupted it and kind of made it feel like the pacing was so different between the two that it just felt weird. Because things had started moving fast the episode before, I think, too. It's just then we had this weird break.
Like everything happened in a way like I pretty much expected everything to happen. Like there were no like major twists or surprises for like these last 2 episodes. Bob died. But
yeah, that was really sad.
That sucked because I like this character. I like Sean Astin. But I knew they were going to do it. And not because of spoilers, but because, somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to die. And it's going to be Bob because he's likable and.
Yeah, you got to kill the clown.
You got to kill the clown. And he's not really a member of the main cast. So.
Yeah.
Again, so, but that scene sucked. I also liked, that Paul Reiser's character didn't turn out to be a villain. Like, he didn't do like a heel turn.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy that they didn't go full mustache twirl with him, and that, you know, the villainous streak he did have wasn't like a selfish like one like in the first season. It was more just like he was doing what had to be done.
Right.
You know, and then when that stuff's out of the way, when he's not having to do that, he's just a perfectly good person, you know, that
Right, exactly. I really love it. It's such an inversion of the first season where the government was an ever-present villain, ever-present threat, and in this season we have the government being more benign. You know, we have a government institution being there not to cover up and hide things, but just like to contain the situation and keep things from becoming worse, really. And that was cool. The whole thing with poor Will. Why they gotta pick on me? 2 seasons now, man.
I think this is the end of his victim arc, though.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, because I mean,
that happen. Like they freaking next season they suck him into a black hole or something.
we knew at the end of last season that his victimization wasn't over because he was hacking up that slug, you know, and there's still a part of him in the Upside Down. I think we got some resolution on that. So I think the kind of like Will being messed with storyline has concluded now. And now we can kind of move on from there and kind of reintroduce him as an actual character and rather than as more of like a plot point.
Yeah, I think so. And I hope so too. One thing I was thinking about, like, again, I think you mentioned up front there was like a cliffhanger at the end, but I didn't really see it as a cliffhanger. The way they wrapped up the season was more like, yeah, you know what? If we got canceled tomorrow, this is the end, right? Because everybody's plot lines are resolved. There's just that one scene at the end where it shows the Upside Down and it shows the big Lovecraftian monster, you know, looming over.
The Mind Flayer, I think is what they're calling it now.
Yeah, the Mind Flayer. Right, but technically the Mind Flayer is sealed off from the world, right?
He's sealed off, but he's not defeated. And the fact that he's standing over the location where they're all gathered at that point in the Upside Down version of Hawkins suggests that it's like, it's not done. You know, like it doesn't seem to be happy about how things have ended.
Right. So obviously it's not done. It can't be done. But it also got me to thinking, like, how many more seasons can we do this? Can we do this concept before it wears thin?
I believe the Duffer Brothers said that they were thinking 3 to 4 seasons.
Right.
Was kind of like what their estimated goal was. Total, not 3 to 4 more.
Okay. Yeah, total. That would make sense to me. I'd say like another season.
I'd say probably 2.
Because,
I think
you know,
it's not going to have much to do with the Upside Down.
Right.
I think it's going to have, my idea is I think the next season is going to be about the numbered kids.
I think so too. I mean,
not just A and her gang, but like other numbers, you know?
But that's why they obviously introduced 8 in the season, because I think you're right, because I think that's an aspect of the lore that they want to explore, and it'll give people a break from Demogorgons and Demodogs and all that, because if you did that every season, like I said, it would wear thin. It would, you know, I mean, there's a reason like Stephen King movies aren't television series that go on for seasons and seasons.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if it was like a 5-season television show, how would that work? But you know, season 4 and this fucking clown's still around, you'd be like, what the fuck?
Like I said, I think next season's going to be about the numbered kids, and then I think after that, I think they're going to go 4 seasons, and I think the season after that, based on what happens in the next season, they're probably going to breach the Upside Down again.
Right.
And that's going to be a consequence of the events of the next season, and then that will bring in the final season. And the Mind Flayer is not going to be slow and subtle anymore.
Right.
He's going to be like full-on invasion at that point.
Mind Flayer's going to be more aggressive because he realizes now that these people can stop him, that they're that resourceful.
And so it's going to be a much more aggressive attack in like the 4th season. And then, probably some of the number kids are going to be involved in stopping it alongside 11.
I think so. That actually sounds epic.
Yeah. That's kind of how I predict it.
Are you on the writing team? Because that actually sounds like a perfect arc to me. So if they ended it at like season 4 with that, like, with that ending, that would be perfect for me.
Yeah, I think that would be the right, run to do for a show like that. They could also, they could squeeze that down into 3 seasons as well. If they're sticking to the kind of like 80s movie motif, they could say like 3 movies, a trilogy, And so they could go in that approach, in which case they could kind of do the numbered kids maybe like for the first half of the season, have the consequences start breaking in around then, have the dispute go for a little bit at the same time as the, Upside Down is breached, and then transition into the Upside Down for like the last like 3 episodes or something, and make that kind of like the epic conclusion.
Make it like they just completely blow up the Upside Down.
Yeah. or they cleanse it. Who knows?
They cleanse it. Yeah, who knows? Could be interesting. I like that.
That's kind of where I think it could go. But in general, yeah, we had in the first episode here, Will is like, he finds a way to communicate with his friends using Morse code.
Right.
To tell them to close the gate as a way to communicate without the Mind Flayer interceding.
Right. With the Morse code. Yeah, close the gate.
And that's why we talk about the fact that the Mind Flayer was sealed off, because 11 ends up closing the gate. But first they had to get the Upside Down out of Will.
Well, yeah, they had to get the Mind Flayer out of Will, right? Or at least the Mind Flayer's influence or his essence or whatever the hell.
Yeah, because if they didn't, then Will would die. And
yeah, exactly.
We saw that that's what happened when they did end up closing the gate to the Upside Down. We saw like all the Demodogs just falling down dead,
Comes to the realization, that, Will wanted to be cold. And, Will's mom says, we've been giving this thing what it wanted the whole time. Mm-hmm. So it's time to reverse policy on that.
Yeah. So they're doing everything they can to warm him up. They got the space heater going. They're putting him in the warmest conditions, and Will seems to be agonized at first, but finally it works, and the Upside Down leaves him. The kids, they make their way down into the tunnels. Because Steve was trying to stop them from doing it, but Steve got knocked out by Max's brother, who came by looking for Max and kind of represented this real-world threat in the middle of this kind of like fantastical threat that they were already facing.
Nice.
So what did you think of Max's brother Billy flirting with Mike's mom?
Oh my god, that was wow.
And Mike's dad's still just like do. Father of the year doesn't know anything.
Father of the year, he doesn't know anything, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was. How about him getting in a fight with Steve?
Yeah, he and Steve fought. They had a kind of a brutal fight. It looked at first like Steve might be able to hold his own. The tide quickly turned on that. He was flat out knocked out until Max had the bright idea to use the sedating, medicine that they were using on Will to sedate Will. She used it on her brother there. Billy, also Will.
Billy. Yeah, also Will, yeah.
So, multiple Wills sedated.
Will sedating Billy, but Billy's a douchebag, and that's why I don't like being called Billy, because Billy's tend to be douchebags. No.
So now with Steve knocked out, the kids can go into the tunnels.
Yes.
They end up kind of in a dangerous spot though, because the Demodogs return to where they're at in the tunnels, and thankfully it turns out that Dustin is able to kind of redeem his mistakes in this episode, because his interactions with Dart ended up coming in useful, because that's one of the Demodogs that's blocking their path happens to be Dart.
Yeah.
And his past friendship with Dart and raising him allowed him to kind of just give him a Three Musketeers bar, and Dart, it's not just a distraction. Dart lets them go.
Right.
As like kind of like a favor to Dustin in a sense.
Right. It seemed like Dart had developed some attachment to Dustin.
Mm-hmm. And so Dart lets them pass, and that allows them to get out of there. 11 ends up closing the gate using her anger, as she was trained in the last episode to better harness her powers. Yeah, and all the demodogs die. All the Mind Flayer infested stuff dies out when it's separated from the Mind Flayer. And that's pretty much it for the main part of the storyline. Then we cut in.
And then we go a month later and they're at the school dance, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, before that, Barb got her funeral finally.
Oh, that's right. Barb got her funeral. With the story came out that the Department of Energy, they left, because, that story came out where they blame Barb's death on an unauthorized chemical leak.
Mm-hmm. Did you love the conspiracy theorists sitting in a lawn chair?
Yes.
Watching them leave, and they're all flicking them off. Yeah, so Barb got her funeral. We got justice for Barb. So everybody that was obsessed with Barb from season 1, just stop. It's done. She got her justice. It's done. We don't need to talk about Barb anymore. We go to the dance, where poor Dustin getting shot down.
Oh yeah, that fucking sucked. I was like, dude, I can relate.
Yeah, poor Dustin. And he tried so hard too. He did up his hair.
Right, he did up his hair. He he was confident, and he was like, and I'm just like, God damn, this is terrible.
But he got his own dancing partner, because Mike's sister Nancy ended up, dancing, showing some pity for him, being kind to him, and I thought that was kind of cute because they did a cool thing with Dustin in the first season with Dustin and Nancy, where they showed that like Dustin had, maybe like a little boyhood crush on Nancy in the first season. And they talked about how like she actually dressed up like an elf for them when they were doing a campaign once, and they kind of like imparted that through, and it seemed to be directly kind of connected to Dustin. And while she was dancing with him, she said that he was like her favorite of Mike's friends. So Dustin got like a little bit of a happy moment there, at least.
Right.
Meanwhile, Lucas hooked up with Max. They had a kiss. That kind of actually started some controversy. Did you hear about that?
Oh, that was the kiss that was talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So apparently, like, they did like an after show. Netflix did not like a typical like episode to episode after show, but one where they like discuss certain events at a time or something. And apparently, the Duffer Brothers put in the kiss between her and Lucas, like as a result to like a joke or something, as kind of like because she got so nervous about it, like now that you're so nervous, you have to do it, kind of thing. And that caused a bunch of people to kind of freak out on the Duffer Brothers, saying like they're basically forcing her to do this on-screen kiss or something. It's an on-screen kiss. Come on, people. It's not that big of a deal, but that caused a little bit of controversy, which kind of dirtied it up a little bit afterwards. But you had that moment. Mike got his dance with 11. So, and 11 got her kind of like her first moment of like normalcy, which was nice. Also, we had a moment before the dance where Dr. Owens gave Hopper a birth certificate for 11.
Yep, which was nice. And Dr. Owens suggested like Hopper wait a year before, before
like fully reintroducing her. But Hopper said, how about one day?
How about one day? Yeah.
And that kind of gave them the moment for the dance. And the season ended with, it showed the outside of the school where the dance was taking place, and it turned upside down, and then you see the upside down version of the school with the Mind Flayer over the top of it. Yeah. And that was the end of the season. So yeah, I mean, I know some people were a little disappointed in season 2 outside of last week's episode, which still wasn't even that bad. It was just kind of a down step. I still think it was good. I think there's some aspects of it that I liked more than season 1. I think they really brought up the horror in season 2 more than it was in season 1.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I really dug that. I think that things like the cinematography and stuff went up quite a bit from season 1. But season 1 was a bit tighter, a bit like more of a tighter focused series run, you know? So I can understand a little bit of disappointment on season 2. I still really dug it. I think given some time and a rewatch, I think people are going to come around a bit more on season 2 and like it more.
I think so. I mean, I like season 2. I thought it was perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess, yeah, it's weaker than season 1 because season 1 was totally brand new at the time. The whole concept was new. This is just like more of that.
Yeah.
I can see why people aren't like as enthused and amazed, but it's like, what can you do? There's nothing you can do about that, you know?
Yeah.
You can't make it as fresh without making a completely different show. So, so I thought for what they did, it was good. I thought the diversion in the middle, the one episode is out of place.
Still wasn't a bad episode. It was just distracting.
Yeah, it was just distracting. Exactly.
So that's it for Stranger Things. That's it for our discussion. Next week, we won't be talking about it. Next week, in place of Stranger Things, we're going to be talking about Punisher. Yes. So I
already watched the first 2 episodes of.
So you got 5 more to go for next week.
Oh, that's right. God damn it.
Yeah, quite a few. But yeah, so if you're not up to date, we're going to be talking about episodes 1 through 7 on next week's podcast. And then the week after that, we're going to finish off Punisher. So we're going to do Punisher over 2 weeks alongside Mr. Robot, which is what we're going to discuss now. We're going to keep discussing that. So this was Mr. Robot episode 3.7, Don't Delete Me. This is also would be episode 8. It's 3.7 because they use that weird system where the first episode is 3.0 instead of 3.1. That's just the typical Mr. Robot naming structure. It's like file name based. But yeah, so this is the 8th episode of the season. It's a 10-episode season, so we'll be finishing that off at the same time we finish off our Punisher discussion. And that's going to be to let you guys know after that we're not going to be back for a couple weeks. We're going to be, that's just kind of how we're handling that. We're going to take a few weeks off, for the end of the year holidays. But let's move on though to Mr. Robot. This episode, tonally much different than last week's.
Oh yeah, well, much different. It's a much different episode in a lot of ways than last week's, or, even in comparison to the rest of the season, which this season has been very plot driven, has been very focused on moving along the plot, and now we pause for a more intimate, more personal, more introspective episode.
More lighthearted.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, more lighthearted. And quite possibly different from anything we've seen from the show yet. This was a very different episode of Mr. Robot.
This is also the moment in which Elliot basically decides to fight back, which is we postulated last week that this was a turning point.
Well, yeah, this was a turning point. But see, the episode is called "Don't Delete Me," and Elliot talks about deleting, everything's talked about in terms of computers with Elliot. What Elliot's really talking about is he's considering killing himself.
Yeah.
And that's what this episode is about. He's contemplating killing himself. In fact, he decides he's going to go through with it.
He buys a shit ton of morphine.
He bought a shitload of drugs that he intends to use to kill himself.
Before he does that, though, before he kills himself or decides to do that, not before he decides to do that, but before he partakes in making that step, he wants to visit the families of the 2 people that were killed in the last episode. Let's just call them George and Elaine again.
Yeah, the 2 people from F Society who Elliot feels partly responsible for their deaths.
And he wants to visit their graves,
right.
Their last resting spots. He visits George's brother, who
again, Elliot finding out about their deaths, reading about their deaths, probably was another thing that informed his decision on what he was going to do, because the reason Elliot is now contemplating killing himself is because everything that's happened he feels responsible for. So
And as he talked to Darlene, he feels like it's not something he can stop either.
Right, he feels...
He can't stop Mr. Robot. Like, he went to jail, he went to therapy, he took drugs, none of it worked.
So he's gonna kill himself and he's gonna kill Mr. Robot, and that's gonna work.
Yeah.
That's like his final solution.
It's a combination of like grief over what happened and also like desperation to stop something like this from happening again.
Because of him. Exactly.
But he visits the families. Like I said, George's brother, total asshole.
Oh, yeah, total. 100% a dick.
He won't even consider the possibility that his brother didn't do what he did.
Right, yeah.
He didn't do what he's accused of.
What kind of a brother is that? Like, Jesus, like, damn, won't even, like, entertain the possibility that, he's innocent.
Yeah, saying basically, like, he was a loser even before then, and, like, showing that their relationship was shit before then anyways.
They're really.
So Elliot doesn't get anywhere with him. He goes to Elaine's family, and it's kind of the polar opposite. You see, Elaine having been Muslim and her family being Muslim, like they're getting ready to leave New York because they've just been treated like shit. And the fact that their daughter is now being labeled as a terrorist is just like the final straw. But unlike, George's family, Elaine's family is all about the fact that she was victimized. Like, they don't believe at all that she's responsible for this.
Right, exactly.
So, Elliot, at first it's kind of like a hostile encounter with them because it just takes them a while to accept that Elliot's there, not to like insult them or belittle them, but because he's genuinely there to say kind things about their daughter, which the father directly says as Elliot's leaving, says, "Thank you for saying kind things about my daughter."
Right. And so Elliot, having got his goodbyes.
His closure.
Having got his closure, he goes down to the beach to end it. And that's when the most unusual, unexpected thing happens.
Do you think this was real?
I think it was.
See, that was the question I was asking myself through the whole episode. I think it was too, but like through the whole episode with that, I kept wondering, is this real? Is this kid actually here? Or is this some kind of like manifestation that Elliot's psyche is providing him because it's what he needs,
Right. It could also be the case too. But I don't know, there wasn't like any kind of sign or any hint that it was in Elliot's head.
Yeah. They kind of, there weren't people that, like he was talking to the kid, nobody was looking at him strangely around him. He was explaining Back to the Future to the kid, and there were other people there like pitching in as well, their comments.
Well, then also when the kid ditched him in the theater, he asked the theater owner, or the guy working at the theater, and he said, "Oh, that kid bailed."
Yeah.
So
there's all these kind of like elements that make you go like, oh, okay, yeah, that's this. There's no clue in place there that the kid doesn't exist. I think the one thing that made me question it is the fact that they did do a flashback in which we saw Elliot as a kid.
Right.
And it's kind of like the birth of Mr. Robot in a sense.
It was.
Because you see Elliot is there, his father is trying to take him to a movie and apologize for being a bad dad. You see Elliot's got his arm in a sling, which means this is after the point at which Elliot's dad pushed him out of a window.
Yeah.
And he broke his arm.
Elliot is full of resentment over it. His dad asks Elliot, can you ever forgive me? And Elliot says no, very matter of factly. And then he just passes, Elliot's dad just passes out. He's
in like a coughing fit because of his illness, because of his cancer.
Yeah, he's dying of cancer,
he just kind of knocks himself out, and people are kind of rushing to his aid, like they're saying, call an ambulance.
Elliot just takes his jacket and runs into the theater.
And at first it's like, is this just cold? But it's like, no, because he starts having a conversation with himself in the movies.
Right, exactly.
And that's where he realized, okay, this is kind of like the birth of Mr. Robot for Elliot.
Right.
We had seen last season, we saw a scene where that was kind of seemed to be the birth of Elliot. It was more, or of Mr. Robot. It was more like the birth of F Society.
Yeah.
But here we see him in a much younger age.
Here we see Mr. Robot's been around for a long time. I think Mr. Robot was triggered probably by the realization that Elliot was losing his dad.
Yeah.
I think that's what triggered the creation of Mr. Robot in the first place.
And so there's a bit of a parallel here in the events of this episode. And that's kind of why I was questioning throughout watching it is this real or not? Because, they go to the movies. So it's like this parallel of what happened in that scene. Elliot ends up taking this kid to the movies. It's kind of cute because the kid's kind of just forcing himself on Elliot. Elliot is just like, I gotta go somewhere. I can't deal with this. And the kid's all like, well, suit yourself, but I'm all alone or something. It's like, God damn it. Like, fine, we'll go to a movie, but if there's not anything good playing, I'm out of here. And then Back to the Future is playing, which is Elliot's favorite movies, and we figure out when this is happening right now in the series is the date from Back to the Future 2, because he said it was on that day. That's why it was in the movie theaters, because it was the date in the future in which God, what was that? I have to I can't look it up right now, but it's basically we've already passed that point. So this season of Mr. Robot is still taking place a bit in the past. We knew that because we knew Donald Trump's not president yet. They keep talking about the fact that he's running for president.
It's during the camp. So we know that this is in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
At the very latest.
Yeah, and we know that this particular event occurred on the day that in the movie Back to the Future, when Marty goes to the future.
Oh, that's right.
They said that, so we know the exact day basically in which this episode takes place.
So we know exactly where in the Mr. Robot timeline we are at.
Yes.
Which, and like I had already noticed earlier, I think it was last season, that Mr. Robot was not taking place in real time.
Yeah.
That it was a little behind where we were actually at.
I think this is the first time we've gotten a real confirmation on an exact time, Yeah,
I think it is the first time. Yeah, it is, definitely.
And so we know kind of that's when it's taking place. So this kid's kind of forced him to go to movies, and the kid wants to watch The Martian. Elliot's basically bagging on it and saying, you haven't seen Back to the Future, you have to see that. So they're watching Back to the Future 2. After a brief kind of distraction in which somebody dressed up like Doc asks Elliot to hold his flux capacitor so he can clean his glasses.
Kid takes off.
Elliot realizes the kid's gone, ends up figuring out that he's gone to this mosque that he had mentioned before.
Right.
His sister used to go to. So Elliot goes there and visits him and to talk to him, and ends up taking him home after a heart-to-heart, and the kid the whole time had his keys.
Right.
And the kid says, if you still have time to do whatever business you had, which we know for Elliot was to kill himself.
Yeah, for Elliot.
But he's changed that. So he goes and he returns the pills or not returns them. He gives the pills to
the guy's brother.
Yeah, and apparently the guy's brother's law firm is tied up with all sorts of shady shit, including the guy he bought the drugs from.
Yeah, that's how he found the guy he bought the drugs from, actually.
Yeah.
Hacking him, He demands that the guy give his brother a proper funeral.
Or he'll leak the information that he hacked on him and ruin him. So basically he's blackmailing George's brother into giving George a proper farewell. And that he wants an invitation as well, so he's going to go to his funeral and get his closure on that moment and let that guy have at least a good send-off. Then he goes and visits Angela because when Darlene had visited him earlier, she was saying that Angela needed him, that it was important, that, she was really off the rails. And we know this to be the case, that she's just completely lost her mind in the last episode.
Right, exactly.
And so we got this, this great shot with Elliot kind of, leaning against the door, and Angela on the other side as he's kind of just talking to her about, what they need to do and, moving forward. And then when Elliot gets home, he is going through the files again, and Elaine had sent a message basically saying that she knew how to reverse the hack before she had died. And so this is something that I think Elliot, I don't know if it was a message to Elliot or if it's a message Elliot hacked from her account. but he has this message on saying that we could, reverse the hack. And now, like, we've established Elliot's mission. He's no longer going to kill himself. He gave the pills back. He's had this moment of closure, of realization about what he needs to do. And now he's, gonna do what we were talking about in the last episode, which is this is the turning point.
Yep, this is the turning point.
The Dark Army, used him and everybody around him so thoroughly and walked away in such a smug way that we were waiting for comeuppance. Yes. And how are they going to get comeuppance? It just seems impossible. Well, now you have a focused Elliot.
Yep. And I think when Elliot and Mr. Robot are focused on the same goal, I think
they're going to work together. Yeah.
I think you're going to see some comeuppance come out of it.
So we got only 2 more episodes left of Mr. Robot. So this is going to be, I think we're just going to kind of get a setup for what the theme of the next season is going to be. This is going to be Elliot setting up his comeuppance for White Rose and everybody associated with the Dark Army and all of that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then that's going to be next season is going to be his comeuppance.
Next season is going to be the big showdown between Elliot, Mr. Robot, and the Dark Army. So yeah, we're already in a good position for what next season's going to be about. So I'm excited. Yeah,
we got 2 more episodes left, and we got this positive turn, and that's kind of what we were expecting last week. And I thought it was going to be kind of more immediate than what they did in this episode. But I like that they took this episode.
They took this episode, to really flesh it out and give Elliot a bit of introspection,
Yeah. Give him kind of a moment to reflect on it and to realize what he needs to do now.
Right, exactly.
And give him kind of more of a motivation to do it, but other than just comeuppance or revenge, but actually because of all of these people that were hurt by this, people who were directly killed, people whose names were tarnished, all of this stuff. Now he feels like he owes these people and that this is what he needs to do. So now he has this mission again.
Yeah, now he has this mission again. Yeah.
So that's it for Mr. Robot. We're going to talk now about what's coming up in the week ahead. So by the time this podcast is up, Friday, December 1st, 2017, Dark comes to Netflix. This is already being described as like a Stranger Things like show, which is funny because it's on Netflix. So it's like Netflix's answer to Netflix. Netflix is like, how are we going to compete with this show Stranger Things on Netflix? I know, let's do Dark. That'll compete with that Netflix's Stranger Things.
Right.
They're competing with themselves now with their own shows. This is the German language show, but it looks really good from the trailers I've seen of it. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. Also, Easy is coming back to Netflix. And then Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comes back as well. And that is Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in space. Kree, all sorts of fun stuff, space-bound stuff. So that'll be really cool as well.
That sounds really fun. That's going to be great.
They release like the first 15 minutes or something because it's a double episode when it premieres. And so they release like the first 15 minutes or something, and it's pretty good. It's got a lot of kind of good little inside jokes and stuff going on, and the space adventure side of it looks pretty interesting. And then Wednesday, December 6th, 2017, Shut-Eye comes to Hulu for its 2nd season. This is that fake psychic drama that's got a God, again, can't remember his name. The main guy from Burn Notice, isn't it? Jeffrey Donovan.
Okay, yep.
So this is his show on Hulu. Happy debuts on Sci-Fi. This is the one it's about a former cop that was corrupt, that's now a hitman for the mob or something. Mm-hmm. And his life is turned around when he starts hallucinating a flying blue horse. Voiced by Patton Oswalt.
That's hilarious.
So that's on Sci-Fi. That's going to be interesting. And it's they describe the horse as relentlessly positive too. It's just going to make a funny combination for this down and out detective turned hitman. On the same day, Nightfall is coming to history. And this is about the Knights Templar. If you've seen Vikings, you have kind of an idea that History Channel has been doing some more kind of scripted stuff. So Nightfall is their next one, Knights Templar story. Okay. Thursday, December 7th, 2017, Psych the movie comes on USA. So I was a huge fan of Psych. I'm really looking forward to this. this movie where they're bringing everybody back together. Then on Friday, December 8th, 2017, The Crown comes back to Netflix. It's about the current monarch of England, Queen Elizabeth. It's about her kind of early reign. And the Grand Tour comes to Amazon, which if you're a big like car nut, this is like your show.
Right.
This is the Grand Tour. It's everybody that was in Top Gear and then left Top Gear when Jeremy Clarkson, I think, got fired. They all basically left and went to Amazon and created the Grand Tour show, which is like the spiritual successor to Top Gear. And Top Gear continued on its own, but nobody really seemed to like it.
Right.
When it continued without all the people that used to be in it. And so the Grand Tour, this is the second season of it. This is your true successor to Top Gear. So if you're into that, that's coming up December 8th. So that's it. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will on Twitter. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, TVEnthusiast.com. And you can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel as well. And you can check out other content on there as well. We've done a few top 10 lists and other stuff like that. So check that out on our YouTube channel. So until next week, thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage